All right, I think we are all ready to start. Welcome everyone. It is my pleasure to have you here today. My name is Anna Tausti. I'm an innovation specialist at S3I, Vinnova Innovation Centre in Sweden. I'm delighted to be facilitating this roundtable session today as part of Hallandtech and the National Innovation Week. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping. I encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. We have a chat function as well as a Q&A at the bottom of the screen. You can leave your name if you want to, and you can also vote on each other's questions in the Q&A function. You can also get that perhaps warmed up. You can let us know where you are calling from today. And just so you know, we will be recording this session. And to the topic of today's roundtable, leaving no one behind is a key element of the Agenda 2030 on sustainable development. These sustainable development goals, also known as the SDGs, are all tied to one another. We can't discuss one without discussing the other. And today we're going to talk about gender innovation and gender equality. And Sweden is among some of the top world innovation leaders, measured in number of patents, but there is still a persistent gender gap in all areas of intellectual endeavors that are underlying technological innovation. In more recent years, we've seen a small but positive development, but a change is happening at a very slow pace. So today, for example, still approximately 14% of all the patent applications submitted included at least one woman, and only 4% of all patent applications come from all female teams. The gender gap in women's participation in intellectual endeavors is also evident when we consider what is maybe considered something more male-dominated areas, such as engineering, for example. The number of women graduates has been increasing. That's a positive development, but we're still looking at roughly around 30 to 35% of women graduating in STEM careers. And there's a multitude of reasons why this is a key issue. I could continue the list for a long time. But once we look at this, for example, from an intersectional perspective, we get only more data. But the fundamental reason why we're all here today is that innovation should be designed for everyone, and it should not only about the teams we put together. So I'm really excited to be getting to discussing today. We have a lot to talk about. We have a really interesting panels today with representatives from across the sector. We want to hear from their experience and ideas of working to accelerate the path to gender equality through innovation. What have they done? What lessons have they learned? And how can we all keep driving this agenda? Today joining us, we have Jeanette Anderson, who is the CEO of Mink, on to new adventures. Also soon, Markus, who is a PhD from Gothenburg Centre for Sustainable Development, Moa Pashtater, who is a program administrator at Vinnova, Anita Santana, who is the CEO and founder of Research on the Go, Marie Nielsen, business developer and product designer at Hi5, and Sakil Hussain, program manager at Reach for Change, as well as Jennifer Grönqvist, future strategies and co-founder of WIT GBT Venture Studio. And how this will work today is that we have 1 hour. I will ask the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll begin to discuss it by asking them questions around the topic. If you have panelists comment off the back of another panelist, please use the hand button and we can get that going. Again, audience, please ask your own questions, and I think we'll have a great session coming on today. But perhaps we can start with having our panelists speak about themselves and their work a little bit. Perhaps Jennifer, you would like to start.
Thank you, Anna. So I am a startup advisor and a co-founder of a femtech venture studio here in Gothenburg, and we create products, femtech products, founded by women only or non-binaries, of course. And we also are building a program for creating female CTOs, since all of the startups are lacking CTOs. And we are currently sketching on a pre-study for a gender-biased corpora. So that is to be a training center for creating gender-neutral algorithms. Yes. Should I pass it on or back to you, Anna?
I think we'll just do it briefly. So maybe Sakil, you can go next. Thank you, Jennifer.
So hi, I'm Sakil Hussain. I work as a program manager for Reach for Change. We are an international nonprofit that supports local entrepreneurs with solutions that betters lives of youth and children. And I myself have a diverse background ranging from tech retail to animal rights. And I've also been involved in early stage tech startups. My thing is organizing. I'm the structure guy. And my focus right now is a national Swedish project called Förorten. The aim of this project is to make the innovation and entrepreneurial landscape more available for underrepresented groups. And we work with one of the founders for this project. called Bling to scale the program and go nationwide, reach more people. In the center of this project is the program is a competition where we have two categories. One is ideas for society, and another one is ideas for women, or actually that means ideas by women. And the last time, 2019, when we had the competition last time, of the 6 finalists, 5 of them were ideas by women and led by women, teams led by women. So the potential is there. So yeah, that's a bit about me and what I do.
Thank you so much, Sakil. Perhaps Marie would like to go next.
Yes, my name is Marie Nilsson and I'm an engineer and industrial designer. I work as business developer at High Five in Halmstad, and I also run a design studio in Helsingborg. I have many years of experience from different roles within product development, design and innovation, both in smaller local companies as well as major international companies. And my perspective on today's topic is the design perspective, how products are designed, who design them and for who. Because all products around us is designed by someone, and how they look depends on many things. The function, of course, but it also depends on tradition and norms. And those norms we are sometimes aware of, but I think most often we are unaware of the norms affecting us. And the result of this is that we have many product categories that are strongly gender coded. For example, tools and toys, stuff that could have been designed in another way and in a more including way. As an example, I can just shortly tell you about an electric screwdriver, for example, is a typical product that has a very masculine and high-tech design expression, even though it's quite an uncomplicated product. I know a woman who uses very, very advanced machines in her daily work at the hospital, but she don't think she can manage a screwdriver because it looks too technical and hard to use. And this is, of course, not the way it should be. So by being aware and think beyond those norms in the design work, you can create creativity and innovation. And for companies, it can create opportunities in terms of attracting new target groups, find new markets, and so on. So design is a part of the problem, you can say, but it can also be a part of the solution with its user-centric mindset and work methods.
Thank you so much, Marie. Perhaps Anita, you would go next.
Yeah, hi, my name is Anita Santana. I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Brazil, and in 2007 I came to Sweden for a PhD in computer science. And since I took my PhD, then I've been working as a researcher in the intersection of data, technology, and healthcare. So I work a lot within the healthcare industry. And about 2 years ago, I started my own company, Research on the Go, where we're developing an IT platform for medical device manufacturers. So the driving force behind it was really to do with the lack of data and lack of representative data that represents how medical devices or drugs affect different portions of the population. We know that women and ethnic minorities are underrepresented in clinical trials and clinical research. So it's very important to find a way to collect this data, if not before the products are put on the market, then after the products are put on the market, when they are exposed to a much broader range of people than the ones that were included in the clinical trials. So that's really what we're trying to do with Research on the Go. We're creating a user-centric platform for data collection that would allow all users of a medical device to give their own perspective on whether that device works for them, or how, or what improvements they'd like to see. So we really believe in making the invisible visible. It's very easy for a medical device company to say, this is a wonderful product, we tested it, when there's no data on how all sorts of people experience that one product. So we're trying to kind of, go bottom up and allow all types of users to be able to have a voice on the improvement and development of medical devices and medical technologies in general.
Thank you so much, Anita. We're happy to have you here today. On my view, I have Markus on your right side. Perhaps Markus, you would like to start.
Hello, yes. So my name is Markus. I have like two careers in my background. I have an innovation engineering first degree in the 90s, actually from Halmstad, but later I turned to design. I got more interested in issues related to, for example, gender. And as a design student in the early 2000s, I started to investigate how design and also innovation in different ways conserve traditional gender norms. And my projects then were clothing oriented. I did a kind of a workwear skirt that was kind of a crossover garment. And I also made my thesis project was a collection of gender bending children's clothing that created quite a buzz at that time, because there was this debate around children's clothing and gender issues. And little by little, I got more and more involved in different types of research projects on gender issues, design and innovation, and also marketing. And I've been contacting several of those. A couple of years ago, I was invited together with other researchers, Karin Ernberger from KTH, Åsa Wikberg Nilsson from the Luleå University of Technology, and Mariana Alves to conduct what we called the Gender Lab, that was financed by Vinnova and included a lot of different organizations and companies, both from public and private sector, where we took groups of employees through a journey of workshops to investigate how their products and services in different ways were gender coded. And we also developed a tool set called the Nova tools and methods for norm creativity, that is still produced or published by Vinnova. So we have been working with little by little, sort of investigating these issues, also broadening also to a more intersectional analysis in the work. Today, I am director of the Center for Urban Futures within the West Sweden area. And I sort of take the opportunity to say that in a couple of weeks' time, we will publish a report by Katarina Haugen and Anna Gilles-Soda that is about how norm creativity takes place in the Swedish building sector. And I will post a little link to a seminar that we will host on the 17th of November on that. So these days, my focus is quite a lot on urban development, and where we also, of course, include a norm creativity perspective always.
Thank you so much, Markus. Perhaps we can find a link to join your session. That's a nice plug there. And then perhaps Moa.
Yes, so first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you to UNOPS and High Five for arranging this very interesting talk. My name is Moa Pashtater, and I'm a program administrator at Vinnova, focusing on gender equality and social sustainability. And Vinnova is Sweden's innovation agency, responsible for increasing Sweden's innovation capacity and contributing to sustainable growth. And this we do by investing in research and innovation. And we know that we need to transform our entire society, our cities, our value chains and consumption patterns into something sustainable. And in that work, gender equality and inclusion is one of the most powerful tools we have to achieve transformation. And in 2020, Vinnova funded almost 4,000 projects for a total amount of 3 billion SEK, why our role as a funder is significant. And that is why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, we have Jeanette. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeanette Anderson, and I'm CEO of the startup house Mink in Malmö. And Mink is a startup house owned by the city of Malmö. And we have different programs to support startups in different phases. And we have been working quite hard as a part of a strategy that we aim to have 50% of the companies in our programs should be run by women or have women as co-founders. And I think it's very important, own at least 30% of the company. We have also been working quite hard to get more women into financing, into investing, because we believe that women investors see things differently than male investors do. And we are really happy that we set up our last structure, Fast Track Capital 3, where we have state fund, some invest, co-investing together with 65 business angels. And 40% of our 65 business angels are women. and they have invested between 200,000 and 400,000. So it's really, really happening things here. And we see a lot of engagement from female investors, and they ask completely different questions and have absolutely different perspective. So this diversity mix of investors, we believe very much in. And we're also setting up, I guess it's for the 5th year now, something called Nordic Female Investor Meetup, where we are we're having an event 27th of October to really inspire and motivate more women into investing and more women building growth companies. And we also do a pitch competition called Pink Capital, as we are Mink with C, where we have 10 teams where women have founded and own at least 30%. Of course, once again, we believe very much that women needs to own to create the ability to keep on investing and build capital to really truly have an effect. I will send you in the chat.
Sorry, I think you're muted.
No, I will send you in the chat the Nordic Female Investor Meetup, so you have that as well. And I also, I have quite a lot of investor perspective as I'm a business angel myself, and I'm involved in 2 different organizations where we are women investing together. So I'm very much on the investor side, and I think that's a good way to impact.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for the entire panel. I think a lot of you reflected on this, and you're working in the area, and there is a strong purpose and motivation you all bring in. But perhaps we can explore a little bit more. What does it mean to you that the power of innovation can lead the path for gender equality? How do you feel about this, and what are your reflections through your personal experiences at work? Perhaps I could throw the ball to Anita to start off with.
Yeah, I'm all about the data perspective. I think that there's no technology out there, no machine learning algorithm that can learn a relationship that's not present in the data. So I think it's very important that we actually have ways to collect data that are representative. So that's really what I find is my own personal sort of mission towards gender equality. But I also think it's sort of, it's not just about data, it's also about research. For example, we know women are less likely to have heart attacks, but more likely to die from heart attacks, because for a long time, we didn't know what female symptoms were of heart attacks. There's no research about it. So really being inclusive in how we, how we do research, how we innovate, how we collect data, to have all of those perspectives sort of embedded in the material that we use to generate innovations. And I think it's sort of not a self-fulfilling prophecy, but a bit of a cycle as well, because if you have more diverse perspectives as well when designing these products or when designing these research grants or research proposals, then you will also be able to capture a lot more sort of different perspectives, and then come up with innovative ideas. So I think it goes both ways, both having the underlying information and being inclusive in how we collect information, and also being inclusive in how we set directions and how we decide what's going to be invented. Those are 2 ways that innovation and gender equality kind of interlink.
Indeed, thank you for sharing. I'm reminding the panel as well that if you want to piggyback on each other, please just raise your hand. I'm not a strict strict one in this sense. Otherwise, I will assign roles here a little bit as we go. Maybe Jennifer, from your experience, from your work, you would like to lead on this a little bit. Continue.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Sorry, there was no question. Perhaps you would like to continue on how you would reflect on the power of innovation leading the path.
Oh, sorry. I guess 3 things. I think that right now we have huge problems in the world, and we need huge solutions, and not just half the population working on them. We need everyone that we can get very soon, and we all know that diversity creates better solutions as well. So, and then also I believe that all humans have the ability to innovate and be creative, and that is something that needs to be released. And I think that it's not being, released right now is what makes us unhappy, actually. So I think it's our fate to do this. And the last thing, I guess, for girls is that, I mean, if you can materialize an idea, then you can also manifest yourself in the world. And I really want to see that happening. But I would actually like to ask a question. I think it was Jeanette. You have like a goal of having 30% ownership in your startups, and we have a majority of ownership. So I'm just asking, why don't you have 50%? What would happen if you decided to put that as a goal instead?
We use 30% to allow a team because, I mean, as you just said, I believe very much in diversity, because that's really how we can solve problems in a much better way. And of course, we can have 100% female ownership. That's not the point, but we have said 30% at least to see that it's actually a female-run company where female have a lot of say on the development of the company. So it's more to start somewhere. And when you have followed this femme-washing debate, you can see that quite many companies selling things to females potentially have a very weak female ownership. So that's why we're focusing on ownership. But it may be your team, 2 male, 1 woman, that is somehow absolutely acceptable. But of course, we would like to see more women owning businesses. So see it as the lowest point, just to even see it as a female-run company.
Okay, I just want, because I used to work at an incubator, and I was talking about this in our dry round as well, that there was this mantra in incubators, some incubators, that there are no female founders, and there are so few female founders. And when this venture studio that I'm doing is a spin-off from the Women in Tech Network, which is global. So there are lots and lots and lots of women in tech. And I mean, we started out in April, and the first week we had 10 startups, female founded, all female teams, research-based, really good business cases. We could only accept 4. This has never happened during my years at an incubator, never. Maybe we had 1 a year.
And so, what did you do to achieve that? Because that sounds wonderful. We don't have that.
We did nothing. We had no money. We had nothing to offer. The only thing we did back then was to offer them free tech advisory boards from the Women in Tech Network. So female tech advisors. And they all came through female networks. They found us. So we didn't even have time to reach out properly. This is what we're going to do for our next cohort, like reach out in Europe. But so to me, the other girls, they are millennials and much younger than me, and they don't understand how magic this is, because it's so obvious to them that there are many women in tech. But to me, this was magic. I had never seen this, and it has just continued. So I think that the approach could be that there should be a 50-50 ownership, because if you're 30% owner, you don't have majority, and you're not going to be able to affect the product in the long run. So I think there's a possibility to find female founders if you just decide that that's what you want to do.
Any remarks from Jeanette? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And I'm happy to talk to you afterwards to get some understanding how you're doing it, because I don't really share that view of the world right now, but it sounds really good and much more promising than what I see right now.
Can I say?
Of
yeah,
course.
I do, because I'm one of those tech founders, and I think my generation, I'm an elder millennial. I'm kind of on the older spectrum of millennials, but to me, it's a little bit awkward to be. I don't know how to phrase it. Like I myself, I want to be seen for the work that I do, and when I approach an incubator and I approach advice, I always, I want to be. I want to be judged on the quality of the work that I'm bringing forth. And I've always been a little bit hesitant to kind of go looking for female stuff, like that. it was always for me like I don't know if it's a point of pride or maybe just the shield that I put on to kind of survive in the environment that I survived. But it's sort of like when people go, oh, you should go talk to female investors. I'm like, I don't even know where to find them. I'm an engineer. I talk to engineers. Most of my friends are guys. Like I don't even know how to get there. So maybe the new generation is a little different, and maybe they have more access to female networks and they're more comfortable kind of portraying themselves as you know, girl power or something. But to me, that's still a little bit cringy. I don't know, but maybe it's something I need to work on.
I think that's great points to be made, and kind of to continue as a segue on this. Sure, I doubt nothing of this comes as a surprise to you, but there's an interesting report published in 2019 by Plan International and Telenor in Norway, studying girls' attitudes and expectations on their future regarding careers in innovation and technology. And we'll also be sharing the report here. But the barriers that girls are bringing up across Scandinavia are still access, gender stereotypes, self-esteem, they don't feel secure about it, opportunities offered, fun and education are mentioned already at a young age. And how do you reflect on this? An easy question, what needs to be done? But maybe your reflections on it. And perhaps Moa, you would like to give your thoughts.
Yes, so well, I think that question and the first question that you asked, how the power of innovation can lead the path to gender equality, they are connected, because I think what also Jennifer and Jeanette and Nita touched upon is that we need to change the approach. I think we need to understand that we need a lot of different solutions, and not every solution will fit everybody. Some are willing to talk to female investors, and they want it to be named female investors. For other ones, it would be more appropriate if it was just an investor. You know, different solutions, different approaches will match with different people. So I think that's the most important thing to have in mind, that when we are trying to change this, we cannot say that one solution fits all. We need to be bold and try different things, and to have various kinds of approaches, but the approaches need to be bold. For example, with data and with AI, we have for a long time heard that AI will cause biases and it will increase inequality. But what happens if we instead say, or we ask to AI, well, how can we use AI to solve gender equality and gender inequalities? What happens if we use that approach? If we already have the technology, we just need to ask the right questions. We need to use it in the right way, because we know that we can use AI to, for example, measure, for example, who is doing most of the unpaid work at home. We can measure who speaks most of the time during conferences. We can use AI to reveal biases in children's books even before they are released, and by so changing the way that young boys and girls learn about who can do what and be what. And in that sense, we already have solutions and technology. We just need to change the approach. So that is one thing that I think needs to be done. And in that job, we need to work together cross sectors, cross borders, from different actors. And we all have different missions, but working together, we can change the approach.
Indeed, thanks for that input. How do you see that when we think of, I believe that the survey, for example, children who were surveyed were around 12 to 18 years old. Representation, for example, how do you see that making a difference? Bringing in, that maybe a character will have a glossy lifestyle magazine, bringing in women and perspectives and different kinds of identities for representing STEM. Do you see this as a key factor as well? Segue question to Moa quickly.
Yes, I mean, representation is super important, but we cannot just talk about the need of role models, because as Jennifer said, there are already a lot of girls interested in tech, and there are already a lot of females founders within tech. but they are not staying within the system. So there's something wrong with the system. And in that, in that sense, we need to work on making them stay. And I mean, we need to work with representation, not only regarding the founders and the people, the girls and the minorities interested in tech, but you also need to work, for example, with representation within assessment boards. And that was something that Jeanette was touching upon. So yes, representation is of course very important, but we've been talking about role models for such a long time. We need to, I think, change focus and approach to get representation.
Absolutely, thank you for sharing. I thought it was very interesting when the panel shared their introductions that actually quite a lot of people are working with inclusive design. And I would be very curious to hear on your perspectives on how we could maybe integrate norm critical or norm creative innovation methods further into the innovation ecosystem. And as a background for our audience, norm critical innovation, this discusses and critically looks at the norms that we have in the society and how we're building on existing structures and not challenging them. And norm creative innovation is then bringing in truly inclusive teams to figure out new solutions, as well as inventing perhaps a completely new approach to doing things. And I know, Markus, you spoke already a little bit about this, but I would love to hear more on your thoughts on how do you see this could be integrated further?
Yeah, I think, and this was very much what we did in the Gender Lab project, where we, instead of, even though there was a focus on gender in the respective organizations that we worked with, the tactic we used, or the strategy maybe rather, was to, instead of starting with headcount and looking at the organization as such, we started to look at the output, the product, the services, and so on that these organizations created, produced, innovated. And it became a sort of a very different type of gender or jämställdhet or project on creating a more equal idea about the company or organization, where we, by looking at and by using a norm critical approach, looking at, for example, could be products, could be communication material like the internal newspaper, could be the advertisement, showing how gender in different ways are present and where stereotypes are present. This became very much a revelation of sorts to all employees, because as some of you have already said, we often take the current situation for granted. We don't see gender stereotypes because they are so much in front of us that we can't even see them anymore. Suddenly they became very apparent, and that typically led to a discussion that also was about the workplace, the organization, who is represented, and so on. But it started with the products and the output instead of working with organization at first. And that worked very nicely. And for example, just a little example what that could be about. So for example, the company Snickers that create workwear. One study that we did together with industrial designers was to look at how do they depict the typical user of the workwear that they produce. And it was very much the soul, the loner, the very masculine man that solves every problem by himself and preferably with force. So this was a very masculine type of person. And to nuance that, the designers that we had involved actually asked people working in the building sector about their work situation. What is it about? How do they see themselves? And out came a very different sort of idea about a building worker that is much more about collaborating, about supporting each other, trusting in each other. It was not a loner. It was a team working person that trusts in his or her colleagues. So then the designer started to make a sort of a parallel or as an alternative type of marketing material that depicted this type of building worker. to create a discussion. And so that sparked a lot of discussion also about the organization and what they take for granted as typical norms and how they take the typical user for granted in a way that is really, could be really quite stereotypical. Yeah, so it's a different approach to start with the products and services and so on.
Thank you so much, Markus. Perhaps Marie would like to continue to reflect on this a little bit also through your work.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear what Markus is saying, and Karin Ernberger's master project actually has inspired me a lot in this area. I have worked in male-dominated organizations all my professional lives, and it's a very special environment actually. And still today, when I suggest that we should look into a product's ergonomics also for female users, for example, still people say that, oh, that's not needed because all our customers are men. So it's really, really hard. And even if a lot of things is happening, there is still a lot of things to do. But I think also there is if we can get this traditional companies manufacturing masculine products and mostly have male customers to realize that there is a demand and a market from the other half of the population, maybe that can initiate an innovation process in that company, and that leads to more equal design. And also they have to review who is working with design and that kind of things. And I think those companies who don't understand this, they will have a lot of competition from other companies, of course, but maybe also from a lot of startups and entrepreneurs that are seeing this gap on the market and are filling it. Because I'm totally convinced that we must go that way, and there is so much potential in taking another perspective here.
Absolutely, Marie. Thank you for also bringing up that this is not only a necessity, but a huge competitive advantage. Anita, I'm going to let you talk in just a second. I just got the news that we have an audience question, so maybe we could take it here.
Yes, and the question is, how can we use innovation as a method to propel gender equality? That is, not how innovation can become more gender equal through directed funding, but how can innovation be used as a tool? Can we find new solutions that are not just more inclusive than previous ones, for instance, services for women or tech that is based on inclusive data, but can we innovate on a systematic level for a more gender equal society? Can innovation be used to move forward faster in regards to this issue?
Excellent. Anyone to take on the challenge?
I was going to pick up on what Moa said earlier. It's sort of, we have, when you create a machine learning model and you can examine it and you can examine the bias in it, the bias becomes obvious, and then you realize there's a problem. So you can, like Moa was saying, you can ask different questions, and those models will not make the predictions you're expecting, but by making predictions that you don't want to have, you detect that there is a problem, and then you can do something about it. But I do think we need to be careful about this thing about gender, designing things specifically for women or designing things specifically for men. I think it's a really tricky thing, a very slippery slope. But I do think it's about just having those different perspectives. And and I'm going to stop here and let other people express what I'm trying to say in a better way.
Perhaps Sakil, you have thoughts on this.
Actually, I have a question for Anita. How do you mean that's a slippery slope?
I don't want to switch the topic, but I do think it's sort of, there are certain things, femtech, okay, only women have periods. So if you want to design something related to periods, it's only for women, but I think it's sort of, there's, now we're talking more and more about holistic health, for example. So it can't just be, something to track menstruation. It has to be holistic health, and then everybody has health. And so it's all about different features and sort of having different adaptations for different people with different needs. So I don't like to kind of split, this is for women, this is for men. I think it's just, people have needs, and then you address those needs, and it doesn't matter what gender they are.
Thank you.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that even in holistic health, it's very important to account for different sex and genders and hormones. We all know this, that medical data is lacking female data, and that has made, I don't know if you know, but until 1993, it was just prohibited to do clinical studies on women at all. So because of the hormone cycles, that they would probably mess the studies up, not because they were going to get pregnant, but because the hormones maybe mess things up. This was released in '94, but this resulted in a lack of medical data for medical devices and medicine that actually harmed women at a vast percentage more than men. So yes, there is a difference, and we need to account for gender even in holistic medicine. So we don't get away from it, actually.
Can I just say, I don't mean that there isn't a difference. I know there's a difference, and I know we need to have representative data, but I think it's about bringing that up to the surface. So the norm is everybody's perspective is taken into account. That's just what I meant to say.
Moa, please, your comments.
Yeah, so the answer, if innovation can lead to gender equality, is yes. As we were talking about, for example, different AI solutions are built to make the society more gender equal. And then it's the innovation leading the progression towards gender equality. For example, we have a project at Vinnova working on this solution, making heterosexual couples do pension saving in a more gender equal way. So in that sense, innovation is making the society more gender equal. But there are a lot of these solutions helping companies becoming more equal. For example, doing their recruitment processes more structured in a way that so they will recruit more non-biased and those kind of things. So in that sense, innovation and products are leading the path. So yes, and I think that what Anita is saying, or is touching upon, this having different sectors like femtech and so on. I think that would work for some. It's okay, but and some will not work towards femtech. But in that we have an interesting discussion about who is gender equality for. Like, we cannot put this on women just. It's for making the society better for everyone. Gender equality is also a question for men. So if you are an innovator, you're responsible for making the society better and for reaching markets and so on, you should think about gender equality as something not just for women, but also for men. And that's very important to keep in mind.
Thank you, Moa. Markus, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one experience that we have having used norm critique in a lot of different types of technologies and products and services and so on, is that there are almost always, without exception, different power issues related to innovation and technologies that are typically taken for granted. We don't even see them. We take technologies as neutral, and we typically don't see how it could be, for example, gendered. And one classic example is of course the crash test dolls that were modeled on US Air Force pilots coming out from the 60s, being introduced in the car sector, then influencing how car seats have been designed. And not only until insurance companies started to look at, for example, whiplash injuries, could see that that affects how, for example, women have 100% higher risk of whiplash injuries. Only then was there a realization that these dolls are not neutral. They are not representative of some kind of mean. So, but it takes that kind of investigation to actually see how technologies, for example, are typically gendered or in different other ways biased. So I think, and it can also be a very good way to spark innovation. I mean, if we can see that, we can also start to think differently about, for example, car seats or users and so on. But it could be a good point of entrance to conduct a norm critique of, for example, technology, to also do other things, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to be a little bit ambitious here. I'm trying to squeeze in one more newish topic, and then we'll perhaps take a 1 or 2 answers. But Sweden has the proudly world's first feminist government, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on how do you think the public sector can learn from the innovation ecosystem? They play a huge role. So what is a tip you would give to the public sector from your industry and area? I'm going to target Sakil unless someone really wants to talk.
Okay, good question. How do I think the public sector can learn from the innovation ecosystem? That was the question.
Exactly.
I actually, the way I work and the way I see the issue is that the public sector are really focused on the ecosystem, on the innovation ecosystem, but they forget like a whole group of people that's not part of it. So they are funding the ecosystem, they are putting resources in it, but they don't really reach out to some of the groups like the competition I'm working with, Förorten. One of our goals is to just be a kind of a intermediate pathway from that group to the sector. Like, I think what the public sector have to do is to focus their resources on the underrepresented groups and to like kind of balance the scales a bit, because there are people with ideas, there are people with, I think like one of the examples, like if you look at Bill Gates, for example, if you talk about tech engineers, we see Bill Gates as one of them, like it is like the father of computing somehow in our world. But the way he got into computing was his mother actually putting him in programming, seeing, oh, is this future in this? And the way he got the big deal with IBM and Microsoft is actually his mother, Mary Gates, doing that. And what I mean by that is it takes time, this encouragement, and this, we have to build systems that enable people to take risks, because rich people and males have been able to take risks for a long time, but not people from underrepresented groups. Like, if parents don't have money, you don't focus on doing innovation. So we have to build that structure, and I think the public sector can help us do that.
Absolutely. I hope we have representatives from the public sector joining us today for some tips. I would love to continue this for a long time, but we're coming to an end, and I would love to hear from everyone some closing remarks on, for our audience, if you had to name the most important thing that we could do to start accelerating the path towards equality when it comes to innovation, we can take around the table, and please try to give it to a minute max. Perhaps we start with Jennifer again.
Okay, well, I have a business perspective on this, and if you want to succeed in business, what do? You set a strategy, you do a roadmap, and you get to know the market really well, and then you do anything to reach that market, and that's what we have to do, and it has to be top down. Thank you. You've all been so. I love you.
Thank you so much, Marie. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was not an easy question, but I think at least from my world with design and companies specifying future products, I think it could be really interesting to maybe not force, but really encourage companies to specify gender neutrality in the product specifications. That could be really interesting to see, because it's very much old traditions how a product looked. So that is my tip.
Thank you so much for sharing. Markus, perhaps you would like to share.
Okay, so I'm using the word norm critique, but I'm thinking that we could also call it, for example, discrimination analysis. I think we need to do that in all kinds of innovation work. I think that should be the norm, so to speak, that we actually always think about who does this innovation or technology discriminate against, because there will always be that aspect, and typically a reason is that we are not aware of also our own biases. So I think that would be great if we could do that more consistently.
Thank you so much, Markus. I think, again, being a bit ambitious. Anna, we have one more question. Go ahead.
Yes, and that is, what age were you when you realized that you were treated differently based on your gender?
Could we implement this to, I would like to hear from Jennifer and Marie, and then the rest of the group could implement this in their tip answer. Thank you.
Okay, so I was 45 and I met the Women in Tech people, and I had never thought of it. I had been in digital for 20 years, working with almost only guys, fleeing every female network. And I just realized that I've almost become like a male. So I realized it after.
Go ahead, Marie.
Yeah, I think actually maybe I was 15, 16 something, because it was when I went to the last year of elementary school. And during that time, there was a lot of incentives to make girls to choose a technical program on gymnasium. So we were on this information meeting and so on. And then, so that's why, yeah, okay, maybe it's not so common. I haven't thought about it before that. So I think that's the time.
Thank you for sharing. And then Moa, your closing remarks and answer to audience.
Yeah, and Markus, you're.
Yeah, I was just.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, when I became a parent for the first time when I was like 32, when I started to think about the parenting role, I started to see things in a very different way around me.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, for me, I think it was in 6th grade when I read the book, the Swedish book Fixtim, when I realized that, oh, okay, so this is what it's called. And this is why I'm feeling discriminated. But one of the most important things we could do to accelerate change, I think, is to scale knowledge. I think we need to be many talking about changes needed, because ideas that can be seen as radical in the beginning, when we are many people talking about them, when we bring them up all the time, they get normalized. And along with that, people getting more knowledge, joining the choir, and these ideas will not be seen radical anymore, but rather the new norm. So scaling knowledge is what we need to do.
Thank you so much. Perhaps Anita, you would like to go next.
Yeah, I think the key is to not forget that innovation is created by individuals. And for those structures and frameworks are very important, at the bottom, there's an individual that needs to be brave enough to take the risk. And if I have to provide for my kids and I can't take time off work to start my own business on the side, I'm never going to do it. So I think at the bottom, we need to understand that we need to give individuals the possibility to take the risk, to be an innovator, to start our own company, to try and do something different. And that's not easy, and it's not obvious how to do it. But we have to look at individual roles, and just like Jennifer, I was not aware of how much I was becoming a guy until and so I was sort of in a situation where I had to negotiate the ownership of my company, and we were 2 co-founders, a man and myself. And when we asked for help from an outsider, it was very clear to me that his views were not equal, or definitely were not leaning towards my side. And that was sort of the first time that I really felt like, okay, there's something here I'd never really experienced before. That's me.
Thank you so much. Jeanette, perhaps you would go next.
Yes, I think the most important thing we can do is stay aware, and also from our incubators, or the science parks that we have, to really ask the questions, because even though we think we are unbiased, apparently we are not. I believe very much in getting more women into investing. I think diversity is the key, and I think we can do quite a lot there. I really like what you're doing, Jennifer, with your tech studio or venture lab, and we are doing something similar here with a tech lab for because we meet very many women that do have great ideas. I mean, my very unscientific take on this is I meet a lot of women that have really good ideas and they are really oriented to solve real problems. But to me, sometimes they lack the technology to do so. So we are also into doing things that could support them to get into the first MVP product, for example. But be aware and discuss, and really also as an investor, you can also choose what companies you're investing in, and you can also put demands on them.
Thank you, Jeanette. And then your experience on the audience question.
I think it was actually when I started to work, because I went to upper secondary school at the technical training, but when I started to work also in the industry, being a salesperson in industrial automation, that was really when I was treated differently, but not before that.
Thanks for sharing. And then Sakil, please go ahead with your remarks and experience.
So my experience, I'm raised in a household with two sisters, my grandma and my mother. So I actually kind of really early noticed it. I was treated differently, but I didn't realize it, like the structure of it, before much older, being in the privileged side, of course. And I think the realization comes every day. I have to look in the mirror every day in whatever I do, just to see, like, okay, like just hearing your thoughts now, like, okay, there's always, like, we have blind spots, we have to be aware of those. And to accelerate innovation, for me, from my perspective, I really see women, and especially women of color now, like really getting the chance to being able to take this space, and stuff is happening. A lot of work has been done for a lot of days. A lot of work still to be done, but a lot of, I'm like really excited to see the new generation doing their stuff, and not just generation, but the younger, also older people having the chance to like make their mark right now. And they just need to have the space to bring their creativity and get acknowledged for it, I think. And I think with the fastest way we can do it, men empower, especially in tech, make room.
Hear, hear. Thank you so much for our panel today. It was so exciting. I wish we could continue further. I hope you do. I hope everyone in the audience does continue with your friends and colleagues and family. We need to talk about it. We need to innovate and ideate for our future. You are more than welcome to, I believe, join one more session for today for the National Innovation Week, and follow High Five and Vinnova and UNOPS Innovation Center on social media. We'll be sharing links if we have the time. Other than that, I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and experience. Thank you for the audience. I wish you that you have a wonderful weekend when you get there. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Happy weekend.
Bye-bye.
Happy weekend.